Hi, my name is Anna Inario, and I'm part of the team that makes the PARC Forums. The PARC Forums here have been at this auditorium for the past 40 plus years. It started in 1977. We have forums on various topics, on research areas that we do at PARC, from AI, human-machine collaboration, IoT, hardware, clean tech. So check back on our website because we have regular forums. So just some housekeeping things. We have the bathrooms at the back on the left-hand side, my left-hand side. We also have Wi-Fi information here in case you wanted to log in. PARC Visitor, and password is PARC Visitor, not that hard. And then also, this will be more or less a 45-minute, 1-hour presentation, and then we have a small reception in the back. So we're very excited to have the future of AR, VR, and industrial IoT for business. We have here Jean-Marc Frangos. He's set up and ran BT Silicon Valley's innovation group to help and played a major role in many new BT services, in TV to cloud services, and also IoT, and most recently in 5G. And just on the side, I found out he's also a glider pilot and plays the saxophone. Just a little factoid for you. Francesco Fornari, he's a founder and CEO of Virtuoso. You might have seen some of the brochures out there. The world's first 5G cloud virtual reality and augmented reality enterprise SaaS product. He's also the co-mentor and advisor of the Microsoft Ventures Accelerator and Be My Guru Network. On the side, he's had a one-to-one session with the Pope in the Vatican, Pope John Paul, and he's also a drummer. He did not drum with the Pope, that was separate, okay? So we also, at third, we have Per Carlson. He's the Director of Media Research at Ericsson, focusing on AV, coding, and content analytics, and how new XR experiences are. He's the head of Ericsson Research in Silicon Valley, and focuses on areas of radio, AI, networking, media, cloud, and security. And then on the side, he's also a musician, guitar, and he's going to be playing at Britannica Arms, right? Yeah. In Cupertino, I believe. So we have plenty of musicians, plenty of Europeans tonight, so please help me welcome them. Thank you.
Anna, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here tonight and walk on the steps of illustrious predecessors. I've been told already who was there before, and I felt very shy and diminished walking on the steps of these great guys. Just one word of introduction to step into the subject and tell you why this is an interesting subject for tonight. And this is just a very simple summary. Anna already told you who I was, but I thought I would just remind you in a few seconds. I spent most of my working life at BT, that stands for British Telecom, not Bankers Trust. And BT has had an office here in the Valley for more than 20 years. I was the founder of that office here in the Valley. BT is a telecommunications company, so very much at the crossroads of everything digital and very much at the center of what we're going to be talking about today. In blue here, you see the areas that I was particularly involved with: AI, video, IoT. We'll talk about XR quite a bit today, 5G and cloud. And more recently, I've stepped into the next phase of my career, stepped out of BT, and I have now the luxury of doing many things on many different subjects. I'm on the board of the Telecom Council of Silicon Valley, which groups probably all the telecommunications operators here in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley. I'm a lecturer at multiple universities, including INSEAD in Europe and in Singapore, but also Tsinghua was there last week in China, Keio and Hitotsubashi in Japan. And I mentor a number of startups. I do quite a bit of lectures, and I do a lot of advising also on corporates about Silicon Valley and how to get the best out of Silicon Valley. So that's me in a nutshell, but what we want to talk about here, and because this is a technical audience, I've prepared a little equation for us tonight. And that equation, we're going to try and solve that together if we can. So the equation goes XR plus IoT times AI at the power of 5G. What does that really mean? So I would probably state that VR, AR, and in general mixed reality, and we're going to learn the difference between these terms with Francesco. This is not that new, to be completely honest with you. I mean, these are subjects that have been around for a while. Likewise, IoT, if you've had your ear close to the ground in the last 10, nearly 15 years, you've heard so many things about IoT and so much hype about how it was the next generation of instrumenting the world. So I think both of these concepts are very well known to us tonight. But my point is, this is now an inflection point for these existing concepts to take a new dimension and to take a new start and really a significant upswing towards the promise that they were delivering. Most of people and most of the analysts have been predicting that VR, AR, and IoT would be very significant markets. If I'm completely honest, I think we're still in the infancy of these industries and these technologies. So we're going to explore why this is going to become bigger. And my point about this is I think the combination of AI and the 5th generation mobile technology will be the ingredients that will create this takeoff of these industries. And that's what we're going to be exploring today. Right, so first we're going to hear it from Per Carlson, who's from Ericsson and who's leading the research team here at Ericsson. He will tell you about a number of these ingredients, particularly focusing on 5G and why this is so important. And secondly, we're going to hear from Francesco Funari, who's here from Virtuoso, and he's going to give us a very good insight on virtual reality applied to one particular sector, which is learning and development in the enterprise. So these technologies have been, most of them, pioneered in the consumer space, and they're now getting out of the consumer space into the business and industrial space. This is also what's going to make these two technologies take a new turn and an inflection point. So that's all I wanted to say as a quick introduction to make it clear to you what we're going to talk about and why it's interesting tonight. It's not going to be a repeat of what you know already on these things. You're going to get some new developments and new things discussed tonight. So why don't we start with you, Per? May I invite you to come and share some wisdom about 5G and the rest of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
That would be useful. Okay, so I'm really happy to be here, although I realize I'm standing here and about to talk about things in AR, VR, and XR, and probably most of you know more about that topic than me, given where I'm standing right now. But anyway, I'm going to give it a try. So I'm coming from Ericsson, and as you heard in the introduction, I'm working for Ericsson Research. I'm located here in Silicon Valley in Santa Clara, where we have a small research office. We are 30 researchers sitting here and trying to be a spearhead towards the larger Ericsson research and mainly working towards the ecosystem and trying to explore together with partners what is going to happen and how our technology is going to be used in the future. So that's a big part of the reason that we're here from the research side in Silicon Valley here. And in addition to that, I'm also driving what used to be called media-related research in Ericsson, so things like audio and video coding, what we call video analytics, content analytics, and also user interaction patterns and so forth. Move to the next slide. I guess most of you know about Ericsson, and if you don't know, maybe a very short recap. Basically, we build everything except the mobiles that make the mobile system work. So it's the base station, it's the towers, it's the networking equipment, and we also run and manage this network on behalf of operators all over the world. Something that is worth noticing about is that when we talk about what we're doing in combination of the networking and the mobile network we're doing and AR, VR type of application is that Ericsson is a country, so we are just like the mobile system themselves. It's a global thing that exists all over the world. So we are participating in 180 different countries all over the world. And I think that's an important factor because if you do anything in this space, you really want to have something that not only works here in the US, but also work in Europe, in Asia, and so forth. So the global aspect and global standard is something that is really, really important for us in Ericsson. That's also part of what we're doing, apart from just understanding and developing new technology, also making sure that it gets standardized and that it could be deployed in a global scale as well. Yeah, there are some key facts there. I could just say from the Santa Clara office that apart from research here locally, we also have roughly 200 other research or other engineers here on the site that is working with technology outlook activities. And one thing that we're doing is, for instance, that we are setting up lab facilities where we could invite people coming to us and try things out. So I will come back to that a bit later as well. So this is a slide that will explain a little bit why at least I'm excited about what's happening right now. And this is showing the different generation of mobile networks. And the thing that makes it interesting for me is that we see the coming mobile networks with 5G will kind of enable totally new use cases and new markets. And if you look at it, we started with 1G, and that was very much about voice connections. And then 2G was introduced, and then almost as an accident going digital, you could start sending SMSs. And you saw that SMS become a platform for innovation and platform for even business use cases and banking and everything. So that was maybe the first time we started to see that mobile system could be something more than just a communication part, but actually a platform for innovation for others. Then with 3G and 4G, we saw really the explosion of using your mobile devices and making you able to reach internet from your mobile phone, and it kind of enabled innovation when it comes to all of these things regarding how you use your mobile phone for watching movies or for checking the web and everything. And also with that also came the maybe good or bad, all the mobile advertising and so forth. So kind of we really saw that mobile broadband before 3 and 4G really enabled a lot of innovation on top of those networks and allowed a lot of new industries to build up around that. And what's exciting for me and what we want to explore, it's really about when the next generation comes, it will not only be designed for this kind of application that are more entertainment based, but also we see that we designed the network to be able to support more mission critical applications, industrial applications, massive IoT applications and so forth, which means that we foresee now and start to see that these technologies will move away not only for the mobile handsets, but also into industrial use cases. And one of these use cases will be around AR, VR, and XR, which I will talk a bit about today. But I'm really interested myself and see what will happen. And this exploring together with people here in Silicon Valley and in the ecosystem is a really key part of what we are doing. This is one slideshow. I guess you all heard about Industry 4.0, and don't pay too much attention exactly what's in there, but the important part here is I want also kind of reinforce the fact that we know the networking part, but we need our partners and the people that we're working with to really tell us how the different industries work and how this applies to their business situation. So we engaged since maybe 2014 or 2013, started to do trials on how the future system will look like, and really going into them and discussing with them and showcasing to them what could be done for them to innovate their use cases on top of our technology. So I'm just going to have one slide showing some of the key things that makes it interesting for us and what maybe differs with the coming technologies than earlier mobile technologies. And I guess you all, maybe the first thing you think about, of course, that you will get more bandwidth, so you can download a movie faster or so forth, but that's not really the main differences from before. So one big difference is, for instance, is that in the 5G networks, we see that we could push computing infrastructure further out in the network, and we have optimized latency when it comes to the radio access link, which means that you could deploy applications that need very fast response time further out in the network. So typically, you could go, for instance, if you want to do an AR/VR type of experience and you want to keep this 20 millisecond from motion to photon latency, that is something that you could do if you allow maybe a couple of milliseconds for the round trip delay on the networking side. Of course, there's still a lot to do to kind of optimize the whole stack to make that work, but we have a number of different occasions where we demonstrated this really low latency rendering of AR and VR type of applications from edge nodes. Also, something that is important is that the networks will be able to set up dedicated slices with dedicated performance characteristics for your specific application. So in the same network, we will be able to support both the use cases of massive deployment of sensors, that is, might be sending data every now and then, but very low bandwidth, but they need to be living for 10 years on a battery. In the same network, we'll be able to support your AR/VR headsets that might need 500 megabits per second or something like that, because we are able to flexibly set up network slices for the different applications, something that wasn't really possible to do on a large scale in the earlier systems. Also, another important aspect of coming system has also to do with the security aspects and the isolation part, because if earlier system was mostly towards entertainment, now when we're going into industries, the security implications of running as I will go into a bit later, your remote driving of big, large machines or remote surgery or those kind of applications, you don't really want to lose connections or get somebody else to be able to go in and control it. So the security aspects is also something that is very key part. But some main things are the low latency, high bandwidth, high security, and the possibility to deploy things further out in the network as well are some of the key aspects. And of course, from a AR/VR point of view, there is some reason that really matters. And of course, it has a lot to do with the possibility to offload parts of your computing into the network, for instance, to be able to make devices that are smaller, have longer battery lifetime, or could have really full resolution while still being cheap and small. I guess, yeah. I want to go back a bit in time and say that one of the ways that we've been working when it comes to kind of understanding what the possibilities are is that this was from 2013, we started to think about what would it take if you would like to control heavy machinery from over a mobile network. So the researchers built this like a small prototype with a toy digger, and we're kind of trying this out and hooking up a mobile phone on top of that one and showcase that you can, over specially adapted 4G network in this case, run this remotely. But quite fast we realized that okay, this might be fun for us, but it didn't really capture the user part of it, and we really didn't understand exactly what would be needed to make this real. So quite fast we started up to work together with partners, and the year after we engaged with the Volvo construction machines or something, construction equipment, and with Telia to make this real. So we did studies, and we used the actual trial test, we call it the seats that the drivers are having, and we connected that one to real big diggers that we controlled remotely from Stockholm to another town in Sweden. And we used the 3D 360 video, and something that we very soon found out when we did this, that if you want to control large machines from long distances, that it's not only enough to have really good audio or really good video. You really need really good audio as well, because it's part of the way the machinist kind of understands what's going on, is that he's listening to when he's pulling on something, how the hydraulic looks like and what's happening with the engine and so forth. So that was like a learning for us there, that it was not enough to make good solutions for the video side. So we also spent a lot of time on things like spatial audio and how to do that in a good way. And then And this was in 2014 already, and we demonstrated this in Mobile World Congress and so. But right now, what's happening now is that now 5G is starting to be rolled out commercially. And what we've done is that we installed these systems in the mines, I think in 9 or 10 different mines around the world, where we have full connectivity all the way down, you know, furthest down. I think some mines are almost a kilometer below the ground. And this is really, really interesting because now we see the things that we talked about a couple of years ago in the lab actually being deployed out in the field. And if you see this, in this case, from this mine, we have these diggers that when you're blasting things far down in a mine and you get a lot of loose rock, then you need to dig it out. And of course, if that is a couple of 100 meters down below the surface, it's not a very fun job. And it's also a very risky job. So by having solutions for remote control of them, which are enabled by the connectivity that we have in the mines here, then instead of after a blast having to wait maybe half an hour to evacuate all the air and so forth and dust there and do the safety checks to see that could we actually send a person in there, they could start digging immediately and get a much higher efficiency that way. And also, of course, the driver could be sitting safe up on Earth, but it also saves him the time it takes to go in long elevators all the way down. So this is really making a huge impact in terms of productivity for mines. And also this one here, it's a connected bolt, and that's another thing that, so like from an IoT point of view, what they also want to do when they dig in mines, they reinforce the roof with thousands of these bolts that used to be, you know, normal unconnected bolts. But with these ones that are connected, you get a lot of sensors all through the mine, which means that you could detect movements in the mountains, so you could get people out before something happens or make precautions around that and kind of help, reinforce the roofs and so forth. So I think this is really, for us, it's been really interesting this with the mines and this, because it's really make a huge difference. Having really good connectivity even further down, you know, couple of almost a kilometer down makes a huge difference for this industry. Another thing that we looked into, so if you look at what's called collaborative design or manufacturing, this is also something that we did to investigate the properties when it comes to haptic. And if you want to collaborate with somebody with using haptic interfaces, in this case, they're standing very close to each other, but the thinking is that they could be, you know, two different parts of a town or something and then connected over the 5G network. And then you also need to be able to do this with both with a high resolution, but also this low latency aspect. So in this case, they're manipulating the same three-dimensional objects and need to, both of them, touch this object at the same time to move them around and so forth. And then you really need to have this tight loop with low latency to make this work really well. How are you?
Good.
Okay. So, of course, we can't only work with others, but we also need to adopt these technologies ourselves. So, eat our own dog food or drink our own champagne, depending on what school you're in. And this is some example of what we're doing ourselves and how we're using these technologies in our day-to-day life. And one thing that people in my team are working with right now is we have field service engineers that are going out to sites. And what we're doing is we're building digital twins of all the sites. So what we have done is that we scanned all, I think, a couple of thousand sites here in the US using video cameras going around and just doing two-dimensional scans of the sites, and then building up three-dimensional models from that. And then we could use that together with AR, VR type of technologies, combine that with the operational systems of the maintenance OSS and BSS systems. So the field engineer going out on the site, before he comes out, he could see how it looks like. He could understand how long cables he needs. He could also, when he comes out on the site, use his phone or something and then see an overlay, okay, you need to fix this one, and then he might have information, you have these kind of alarms, and then when he had fixed it, he could see in the operational system, okay, everything is done, and so forth. I think that's a really interesting application that has a very concrete, practical use for us, and we see that the work that we do in research very fast could go from being research, what we are doing in terms of creating really good three-dimensional models based on these photos and videos that we have taken out on the different sites. Another part that is also with this tower inspection is that we have a lot of cell towers all over the world, and they're usually very high and contains a lot of equipment, and we're sending up people there that are supposed to fix them, and it's not always the best work environment. And with this, we are using drones combined with video analytics to send the drones up to scan the towers, and using AI to analyze the video imagery, so we could, for instance, catch things like if the bend radius is wrong. We could catch if there is missing water gaskets and so forth. So before he actually climbs up, he knows exactly how it looks like, what is working, what is not working, and he could plan the work before going up, so instead of going up and down all the time. And then, of course, we are also building our own factories, and I think recently we set up a factory here in the US to do manufacturing of some of our radio base stations and so forth. And we're using AR technologies there in order to guide the operators that are kind of building things both in terms of assembly, but also in testing and so forth. So we're trying to use a lot of our own, so like research and technologies that we have developed ourselves or together with partners, also when we do our own operations. This is something, just an example on something that we've done recently. So like democratize smart immersive applications. It's really about, if you really want to have mass adoption and let everybody has the possibility to use these devices in the future, they really need to be cheap. The battery time needs to be long and so forth. So we really believe you need to offload as much as possible into the network or into the cloud. And this is something that we demonstrated together with Qualcomm. So, because for that to work, you need to have support in the chipsets, and you need to have support in the network. And then you need to work with standardization, and you need to work together with the different partners that we have. So this is something where we showcased how you could have a really good VR experience with all the rendering being done on an edge node. So the devices only had to show what's there. And then you need to have some smart technology to get that working. But that is something that we demonstrated, and will mean that it will be available in the chipsets in the future as well. So last slide. So this is just want to say a couple of words about our collaboration, because we are experts on the networking part. We are really not experts on the applications and so forth, even though we're doing some work there. And what we have done recently is that we have started up a lab in Santa Clara that's called the D15 Lab. And it's a place where we do co-creation and innovation with people, and we invite people into our lab to try things out on a real live infrastructure and test bed. And it's something that had kind of grown organically over the last couple of years, that we started this office with the research here in Silicon Valley in 2008. And then in 2010, when Apple come out with their first, maybe they come out 2008 or something, but the first big problems were around 2009 or something, when we saw that the way the mobile devices utilized the mobile network were killing the networks because they were signaling so much. We realized that we need to work with the end users and the device manufacturers to make sure that they understand how to use the network, and we understand how we're going to design our networks to support these things. So we started up something called Smartphone Labs, and working with all the major manufacturers, I think probably all manufacturers of mobile phones, in 2010, and it still continues. In 2013, we started to look into how how you could, for instance, if you have a watch like me or another brand, so we developed a solution that makes it possible to keep the same phone number on your watch as you have on your phone and so forth. So that's something that we've been working on. It was developed here in the office in Santa Clara. Or actually, we were in Milpitas by then, but. And yeah, so that's something that we've been doing, also continue to work on. Then we started these outreach activities into industries in 2015. There was a lot of us going out somewhere and installing things. And really what we're expanding a lot now is the D15 Lab, where we invite people to come to us to co-create and try things out. And if you're interested in doing that, I think we have Diala in the room there, who is the head of the D15 Lab and the ones that are coordinating all the engagements that we're having. So if you're interested, she's the one, or you can talk to me. Yeah, thank you. I think that was what I intended to present.
Right. I've been told that I've got some smart audience here in front of me today. So I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you can create a slide and present in PowerPoint? Yeah, you are really smart. But because you are at PARC, I pretend that you are much more smarter. So I'm going to make a little bit more difficult, okay? How many of you can create immersive experiences and present in virtual reality? Don't worry, because today, in the next 20 minutes, a magic will happen here. Everything started with this guy here called Charles Wheatstone. In the 1838, he invented the mirror stereoscopic. That is the basement of any XR technology that you can find today in the marketplace. That's how we started. And then, in the 1992, the Lawn Mower Man was released based on a book written by Stephen King. And I got such in love with this movie that in the 1995, my journey began. It's since 1995 that I've been studying, at the time, virtual reality. So it started as an hobby, then it became a service, and now it became a product. It took me quite a long of time, but I'm getting there anyway. So Jean-Marc said all the different acronyms, VR, AR, MR. So before we start, let's clarify what those terms are all about. So if you think about, on the left side, we got the completely immersive experience. And then on the right side, it's the reality here. So virtual reality, it's a technology that is fully immersive. On the other hand, we got augmented reality, which is overlay digital content on top of a reality. And then in the middle, we got this mixed reality, which is a combination of the two. Plus also you can do a lot of other things. You can actually mapping the reality and interact with the reality on that. So all of this technology goes under the name of XR. Okay, really basic. But the first application of this technology since back on the 18s has been gaming. Gaming. Even nowadays, it's still quite a big percentage of VR applied in gaming on this. But what we have seen in the past few years, and what we are seeing more, is a shift toward the applications for enterprises. More and more enterprises are now deploying, as we saw from a PARC presentation, this technology on this. And it's a reality. So let's look at the numbers. So if we look at just last year, virtual reality spend was around 6 billion. which still the majority of it, it's around the consumer. So, and the majority of that 77%, it's gaming. So 23, so it's less than 1/4, but we are getting there, essentially, on that. So if you look at the latest research that it was released a couple of weeks ago and will be publicly launched in San Francisco next month, you can see here, this is a global research, that now more and more enterprise, more and more XR developers are shifting into the creation of VR and XR content for enterprises. But then let's zoom in. So what they're going to do inside the enterprise? So if we zoom in, we see here, Per talked about the product design and prototyping. Yeah? But if you see here, the middle one, it's all about, there is a lot of usage inside learning and training on that. But if we zoom in again inside those two pillars, we can see that Abbey Research predicted that only enterprise virtual reality training, so it's a small segment of this technology for enterprises, is going to grow to 6.3 billion. That is a massive growth comparing to last year. It's 30 times more than it was last year on that. Why we got such a big adoption of this technology inside an enterprise? Well, because Accenture has identified that and says that VR immersive learning has got a lot of benefits. You got 100% of engagement. You got reducing cost, learning through mistakes. But there is one benefit that no other technology can provide you, which is called retention rate. How much I will remember from those content that I consume from a communication or from a training point of view. So let's look at how it works. If you think about the cone of learning, really, it's the Bible, if you wish, of any communication training. Basically says that if you read something, you will remember 10% after 2 weeks. That is the retention. If you watch a movie, you will remember 40, maximum 50% of the content after 2 weeks. Instead, if you consume virtual reality content, you will remember up to 80%. So if you want to do an imprinting into your audience brain, can be training, it can be communication, then virtual reality is the way to go. And we can see here some early adopters in the States. I mean, they are the ones that are training millions of employees in virtual reality, which is Walmart. We saw already some, they are pioneers inside the enterprise market on that. However, Francesco, you love VR, right? Yeah, I love it. And there are such a big growth market. There are lots of benefits, great customers. But there is a problem here. Why then you with the beard, and why you with the glasses, and you and everybody else are not using virtual reality in their corporates in a daily basis? Well, because there are lots of problems. Let me tell you what are the problems. So you can split the problems in 2 different categories. The first category is content consumption, or better, content creation. So all the enterprises says that in order to create a virtual reality app, it requires time, special skills, a lot of cost production. And then you know what? It's harder to keep up to date. That is a big problem. Content creation, it's a big problem for enterprises, right? Because if you think, or nowadays, if you have to create a virtual reality app, what you have to do, you need to write a briefing, deliver that briefing to a digital agency, spend around $20,000, and you will get a fantastic virtual reality immersive experience. Brilliant. But an enterprise doesn't need just one application. They got dozen, hundred of trainings. They cannot apply, they cannot move into VR because it's not scalable. It costs too much. There is no CEO that will sign up that business case. So everything remains into the innovation bubble of that program. But assuming you are Google, assuming you are Apple, you got a lot of money, and you say, you know what, Francesco, I don't have any problem with money. I'm going to transform all my training in virtual reality, right? You can do that if you got a lot of money, but then you got other problems, which is all about content consumption. So when you wear one of those VR goggles, you cannot interact with the person. It's a lonely experience. How many times have you ever seen a picture like that? Where are you watching? Oh, I'm here. I'm in the middle of the street. Yeah, but can you pass me the handset? Oh, yeah. I mean, it's great. It's great for PR. It's great for events. But I cannot work every day like that. It's a nightmare, right? So you come here to see what is the future. And the future is fundamental. There is a problem here where enterprises wants to deploy the technologies because there are lots of benefits. However, big names, including Microsoft, Oculus, they don't have a scalable solution for enterprises. I mean, they do, but it costs a lot of money. Here, what I'm not talking about a niche of enterprises. I'm talking the whole worldwide enterprises market. Well, we fixed it. Yes, we did. Virtuoso, it's the only virtual reality enterprise product which allow you, even you, your smiley face, I like that, and you, and everyone, to create a virtual reality trainings, immersive presentations, immersive experiences by yourself in a matter of minutes. If you're not going to believe me, after this talk, I got the product over there, and you can try by yourself. And once you created that VR training by yourself, so you don't need to talk to a digital agency anymore. You don't need to spend $20,000 every time. Once you create it, then still Virtuoso will allow you instructor, you presenter, to be in control of that experience among an audience of 30 people. So you can guide them, you can see where they're looking at, no matter where they are around the globe on that. So that is quite different approach. This is how it looks like. Basically, some of our clients says that virtual reality, it's PowerPoint for virtual reality. Or you can call, Google Slides or Keynote. Essentially, Virtuoso, it's PowerPoint for virtual reality. It's based on slide. So if you can use a PowerPoint, you can use a Virtuoso. By every slide, it's not anymore 2D. It's a 360-degree environment on that. And once you create the content, and you click Start Presentation, so you don't need to publish anywhere. You can simply click Start Presentation, like in PowerPoint, and you are in control of their experience. So it's you moving from one content to another, guided. And you can see in real time, you can see that the red dots there, you can see in real time where your audience is looking at. And I can point them. I pointed to that folk rift. You see that mark? So I can see that Mark is watching where I want him to watch. Instead, Mary and David, they're not. So I can say, Mary, David, can you move more on your right? And they move on your right. It's all done literally in real time on that. How it works? You need a 360-degree camera, which takes videos and images in a 360 degree. It's super simple. It's like taking a selfie. Then if you need extra content, you can use libraries. But here is where it comes the beauty of it. Enterprises has already got training materials in 2D. So hold on, Francesco, are you asking me that I needed to bin what I have done and start from scratch creating virtual reality content, you are crazy. You are too disruptive. No, I don't want to do that. It's going to cost me too much money in terms of time. Well, guess what? We support 2D content. So if you already got your existing library of content, you simply drag and drop those 2D content inside the platform, and the platform in real time will render those 2D content and let your audience consume in a virtual reality environment. As simple as that. And you're going to see later on that. You take all this content you put inside the platform, and then you're going to deliver that through the goggles. But again, enterprise has got some usability laws as well. So how about in one room, there are people that cannot wear goggles. For example, for pregnant woman, for example, for health and safety, it's best to don't wear the handsets. How are they going to consume my content? Well, again, don't worry, because you can still consume content using the tablet or the smartphone, or simply watch the content through a normal screen as I'm doing right now. And you don't need to do any extra things. It's all done automatically in real time on that. We launched the product 1 year. Now, this is, I don't want to sell, it's not a sales presentation, but what I'm trying to say here is that it took us around 3 years to create this product in collaboration with some of the biggest learning, research and development institutions. So one of the R&D labs that we work very closely is with British Telecom on that. And after these 3 years of hard work, we launched the product in less than 1 year. We have been bombarded with orders, essentially, on that. How they're using it. How enterprises are using virtual reality nowadays without spending a fortune? Well, they're using, of course, on the left side, they're using it for learning and development. I'm not going to go into the details. So they're using it for talent acquisition, onboarding, really boring mandatory trainings, transforming that in VR, soft skills, you name it. But also they're using VR into the marketing, and the sales arena on that. So that's how they're using it. A couple of examples. Netaporter. Netaporter is the biggest luxury e-commerce that you can find. Armani, Gucci, you name all the brand. And they're using Virtuoso for onboarding. Essentially, with Virtuoso, they reduce cost, reduce accident that they had in their warehouse, and now they're using Virtuoso in many other ways. They're using also for brand. They're using it for prototyping facilities. Because once you got that platform, so easy to use, you can use it as you like it, because you don't need to spend $20,000 every time and that. And one other example, we did a world's record 3 weeks ago with BT and Belfast Harbour. So 3 weeks ago, it was all around the news in Europe, from Computer Weekly, the Daily Mail, all of them talked about this world record. Essentially what we did the first ever VR live content creation and real-time content consumption over 5G network. So what we did, we had the user that created the company using a laptop connected to a 5G router, not Wi-Fi or Ethernet or Ethernet or anything else like that. It was a 5G router connected to the BT 5G network, where you could get our cloud platform, and then all the users, which were spread out in different locations, they were connected. We connected the handsets, Pico interactive handsets, tethered with 5G mobile. And all of this was done over 5G network without touching whatsoever the classic internet network. It was done all in real time, virtual reality, content creation, consumption, and interaction, all in real time as a per set with almost, I would say, zero latency on that. Now, you cannot democratize virtual reality if you have got a product, a technology that works just for one brand. So this is an agnostic platform, essentially. And we have built an ecosystem of partners as well. And here I got one of our biggest partners, which are supporting Virtuoso globally. It's Pico, which it's one of the biggest VR company, both also in Europe, in the States, and in China on here. So I promised you that I was going to show you a magic, and it happened here. Now everyone, not only you that are just, you are smart people, but anyone, even with simple skills, around the world can now create virtual reality immersive presentations by themselves from anywhere. And as my grandfather of my grandfather of my grandfather, Leonardo da Vinci, said, knowing and meeting people enrich your soul. So I'm here to explore further collaboration with you guys. I'm here to deploy this technology, where inside your company or inside, or you may know some of your peers that are interested in this. So we are here to build an ecosystem because we want to make sure that this technology is accessible from everyone, from anywhere. Anna?
Francesco, thank you so much for the presentation, and Per for the presentations. Before we get on to the Q&A, I just wanted to summarize what we've learned because I gave you that equation to begin with, and my premise there was that we are at an inflection point for these technologies, both IoT and VR, AR, all these immersive technologies. So if I sum up what I've learned in these presentations, number one is IoT and VR are moving from the consumer applications into business quite aggressively, and you've seen many examples, both in the industrial space, in the office business space. This is really happening at the moment in real time. The second thing is 5G, the fifth generation mobile, is one of the critical components that is enabling these technologies to get a new wind in a way. Number one, because VR up until now was suffering from the, you get a bit nauseous because the time it takes for you to turn your head and the image follows after all. Even though if it's a short time, it creates some problems with nausea. That's the point that Per was talking about. The motion to photon time is reduced by the use of 5G. So there will be a new life coming to VR thanks to 5G. The other thing that is happening is it's democratizing these technologies, because the complexity that used to be required right there in the headset, right there in the goggles, right there in the PC that was connected to it can now be pushed to the edge of the network. And you all know data center technologies as we know them today, the big data centers that are sitting with Amazon or Google or other suppliers such as Microsoft. This is about to be also revolutionized by 5G and the fact that the technology and the complexity is moving somewhere in between the big data center out there and the headset. It's going to be sitting at the edge of the network. So this is a new paradigm for how these new technologies are enabling and democratizing software. And the last point we heard from Francesco is that not only 5G, but also software and the whole industry is helping to democratize access, particularly in learning and development, as we've seen, but enterprise access at scale to these VR technologies, with the example of Virtuoso, that BT is effectively using aggressively in multiple dimensions in order to make this possible and affordable for everyone to create content and consume the content. So that's kind of what I've learned today through these few minutes. Perhaps, Anna, we can open to Q&A and get a few questions from
So we'll
the audience.
have time for maybe a few questions. So, yeah.
Hi, thank you for the talks. They're great, really informative. I have actually two questions. One is for Ericsson and thinking about, especially as climate change is increasing all of our climate emergencies, the transition from the hardline telephone to mobile telephones, and at least in the US, the federal mandate for the hardlines that there's only a certain number of minutes a year that those lines were allowed to be down. But we don't have any such regulation of the mobile devices. Is that something that is coming, and what are your thoughts about that? And then also for you, I was wondering about the rig. Was that actually one of your rigs, that tripod and the, is there a rig that you guys specifically use?
No, I'll just take this. It's so simple, because yours. Think about that, because yours is much harder, we cannot use any sort of cameras, on that. So it's we don't have a proprietary.
So you use different rigs.
Yeah, on that. Over to you. That's easy.
Well, so first a bit of a disclaimer. I'm a researcher, so I don't know the policies part. But one important part when it comes to this with the 5G networks is the availability. And as I said, that one key thing is that we will be able to guarantee availability in another way that we could do with the 3G and 4G networks. So that's an important part. And parts of it is, as I said, we're going towards different kind of use cases, not only the entertainment part. Because if the Netflix doesn't download, okay, you'll be a bit annoyed, but it's not really that bad. But if a car crashes, or if an industry stands still, or somebody gets hurt because the connectivity is lost or something, then it's much more.
But if we get to the point now where rather than a tower, you can have a drone that moves in.
Yeah.
Mobile base station.
Mobile base station. The base station itself is so far standing still, most likely, and then the drones will go around and do other stuff. And maybe they could be used in relay purposes as well, in disaster scenarios and so forth. But I think otherwise a lot of the actual base stations will probably be standing still most of the time.
Do you have any questions in the back there with Shelley?
I'll just add one quick thing to what
Okay,
Per
go ahead.
said about the environmental impact of what we've talked about tonight, right? So if you think of VR and AR, I mean, to date, if I have the choice between traveling to a face-to-face meeting or doing an audio conference or a video conference, there's still a little bit of a hesitation. With what you've heard today, the advances in VR technology will make it much more possible to have real life-like collaboration. So that's an aspect that will be positive, I think, for the environment in reducing the carbon footprint of all these people that are traveling, using planes and all sorts of transport. The other thing that you've seen is those banks of drivers that will be sitting in something that looks like a call center, which effectively is a driver center, that will be driving construction equipment or inside mines type of equipment, or even potentially driving cars in the stages of development towards the full autonomy of cars, where people still need to be there to drive. You might, as a driver, decide that you don't want to drive these 200 miles on the highway because it's boring, and you might want to purchase the fact that you get a remote driver to drive the car for you.
Not in Italian, anyway. Not in Italian,
you
right?
You might have a choice, you might have a...
you can choose also Okay.
But some very good drivers in Italy, of course, but very fast drivers.
Yes, I have to say.
So maybe a Swedish driver for the highway.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, we have a question here.
Hi, I have a question for Frank. So as a former employee of one of those dreaded digital agencies you mentioned, one of the things that I think a lot about is seeing is believing. And if you were able to democratize creation of VR, particularly in a context where deepfake technology is increasingly accessible and increasingly cheap to deploy, are you worried at all about essentially democratizing access to three-dimensional lies?
Well, generally, I'm never worried about anything, right? I think that if there is a threat, I see that as an opportunity. I mean, at the beginning, I kind of get scared, but then after 10 minutes, I click to understand what's the opportunity on that, you know. So no, it's not, you know, it's not, because, you know, it's about expose multiple content libraries to anyone on that, you know. And, you know, if you think about that, today we're talking about enterprises, right? But it's a journey, you know. It's a journey that eventually starts with enterprises, big enterprises, then it's going to move to small and medium enterprise, SMEs. Then it's going to go into the academic, you know, a kind of school, and eventually it's going to go into the consumer, you know, and open up to people where they are less lacking than us, you know, in terms of education and access to infrastructure and such innovative technology, essentially, you know.
We'll take one more question.
Thank you. This is for Frank. I don't know if you have already included or plans to include AI as part of the VR set, including segmentation, detection, and classification.
Can you rephrase it? Because I want to make sure that I understand. I mean, I got it, but can you rephrase it?
So typical computer vision applications these days focus on classification, segmentation, and detection. There's an opportunity, and I've seen merging this detection same time into the VR. And then there are VR experiences watching a TV, you immerse a video into that.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen your product and sounds looking
Yeah.
into it. So whether you're watching something, but you also see the face detection going on at the same time. And so there are opportunities including AI into the VR, XR.
Yeah, okay, I then understood it correctly. Yes, so one of the fundamental aspects about this technology is that it is dramatically complex technology, right? Because we're talking about the 3 dimensions here, and then if you add also AR, you know, or mixed reality, it's the technology, it's so complex on it, right? Our approach is to make that complex technology much easier to use on that. Now, to do that, it requires a lot of work, you know, and, you know, we have got constantly doing R&D, you know, on this with our partners. And we got an aggressive list of features and technologies that we're going to implement inside of the platform on that. So, yes, we will. We don't. As well as we're going to implement other type of technology into it. But it's a journey, because I don't want to release a feature that only Mark, Mary, and John can use it, and then the rest of the world cannot use it, right? So that is the trade-off. Thank you for your question.
And
Great.
Francesco, if I can add just one quick thing to this, because what you've seen in the slide that Francesco was talking about, where he shows the example of the students looking at the wrong part of the screen that the teacher wants them to focus on. I think education is undergoing its own AI revolution. And what you're seeing here is the combination of virtual reality making those interactions much more real, much more immersive, but the potential to add more and more AI in that education cycle, make it more personal, and adjust to the pace at which students learn using AI. There's a lot of work that's been published on the subject, but the thing is the potential of mixing VR and AI to deliver better education is real, and also more interactive, you know, suppressing the risk of having, you know, 3-dimensional lies effectively.
Yeah.
Maybe just a comment as well. I think that what you aim at, so like one of the key technologies, I think, when it comes to do the 3-dimensional mapping of the space and understanding the context and using AI not only to understand the environment that you're in and maintaining sort of like a dynamic map of it, but also understand the user and what kind of context he's in and what he's trying to achieve. So it's a combination of having a really good understanding of the physical surroundings and understanding of the user and so like the context he's in and what he wants to achieve. And the other thing I think is also that in order to do this in a good way, I don't think that we could rely on, like today, everybody that's come into a room with an AR headset do their own scanning of the room. I think it's really about you need to have collaborative solutions where you can share this kind of data. So to make it, so instead of I having to go and scan the whole room, I've used what you others have done before here. So,
Yeah.
so like collaborative solutions for mapping out the space and using combination of techniques like video, audio, the sensors of different kinds, and merging them. I think that's one key technology to really make AR and mixed reality experience really powerful in the future.
So just in closing, thank you so much. One mention, PARC Forum, this is the last PARC Forum for this year, 2019. We will be remodeling the area for the next couple of months. So please check back, sign up for our newsletter so that you know what upcoming speakers. We'll have very special speakers for 2020 as we approach celebrating our 50th birthday here at PARC. So thank you, Per, Francesco, and Jean-Marc for joining us this evening.